Welcome in to the Bro 4 Squad podcast, where we're just a bunch of bros drinking beer and talking movies. I'm your host, the Mayor, Jeff Hornacek. This is our review of X-Men from 2000. Happy birthday, X-Men, by the way. Alongside me is my co-host, as always, the mad scientist, Brian Banner, here to review this movie as we do on the 5 Bro 4 Squad criteria. The acting, the story, our favorite scene, any lasting impact, and the movie's rewatchability. Now, Banner, it's been 20 years since this film came out. You are a huge X-Men fan and a huge Fox guy. What did you think of the cast when you went back and revisited them at Charles Xaviers School for the Gifted?
It is perfectly cast. They do a fantastic job of mixing big, well-known actors and actresses in with relatively nobodies. Like, this is Hugh Jackman's first role in Hollywood, I believe. So they did a really good job of picking people to fit a specific character and not just, oh, it's a big name, or we have to get somebody that has all this potential.
Yeah, so what I'll say to that, it's kind of crazy going back and looking at this movie, how few people I had even recognized in the year 2000. Like, when you go into this film as a kid, you're like, oh, cool, it's X-Men. Like, you don't even fucking realize that. But for this thing to actually make money, like, you have to market it to a much wider audience. And you could probably say, I guess, Patrick Stewart from his Star Trek roles, which, again, in 2000, he was still, like, in the beginning of playing Picard. Maybe Famke Janssen, because she was in a lot of stuff as a kid. But Halle Berry might have been the biggest name in this thing.
Yeah, I agree.
It was still, like, everyone was just cast perfectly for their roles, not based on their name cachet. One guy I really want to say, just because I don't feel like we'll ever talk about him again on this podcast, but Bruce Davidson, who plays Senator Kelly in this movie. I mean, and I mean this as a compliment. Could you pick a better guy to play, like, your asshole?
No.
He's so good at that role. And this movie really does hinge on him. Like, if we want to talk actual screen time, I would bet
he's got a lot.
I bet he has as much as Magneto, or close to it.
Close to it, yeah.
I mean, if you count, obviously, like, when Mystique is playing him, like, it's still the same actor, is what I'm saying. So he's a big part of this movie, and he works really, really well.
I agree.
The only other thing I'll say is Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart. I will never, even if they did like a 42-hour film together, I will die saying I did not get enough of them two together on screen at the same time.
They were born to be on screen together. They have this weird instant chemistry that you buy, which especially in these two roles, you have to have that strong friendship, brotherly bond that Magneto and Professor X have, but yet still be, against each other. And I don't know that I can't think of two other people that could do it.
Before we move on, just to be objective, I got to say, one thing I didn't like, I thought Halle Berry actually, and I've never been a huge fan of her as Storm. I just feel like there's a lot of better actresses to play that role. And I know she has the name cachet, and she's obviously very attractive and a well-known face in Hollywood, but she always seemed kind of disinterested in playing the part to me.
Yeah, it's hard because, like you, I'm not a huge Halle Berry fan, but I also feel like they wrote the character of Storm really, really weak. And so I'm not sure if she was just a product of bad writing or if she actually wasn't good.
Yeah. I do prefer Alexandra Shipp as the younger Storm, but also she had a lot more to do. Like, especially in Apocalypse, she's like his right-hand person.
Right.
All right, big one. On to the story. So this, I mean, holds up 20 years later. It's actually probably way more relevant right now, which is insane.
Yeah.
The story of X-Men, but we've talked about this on episode 120 of the Bro Force Squad. I'm not sure if that's dropped yet when people are listening to this. But, Banner, it is a story that not only transcends the comic book genre, but I think let people know that this is not just people with capes making one-liners and punching through buildings. Like, this genre has something to say in a way that it's relatable to people and can get an important message out. So what did you think about the story in X-Men?
The story is something that has been relevant for the last forever, and it will always be relevant. And that's essentially civil rights. That is something that's never going away. It's always going to be relevant. But they were able to take this huge, big issue and put it in a little bottle that everybody can understand and everybody likes, and it's fun, while still being a pretty dark movie.
I think what's great about it too is, as a kid, you go like in 2000, I was probably like 12, 13 years old.
I was in 5th grade.
So I went into this movie, and the whole civil rights allegory, I mean, understandably, totally went over my head. And I still got a lot out of this movie, and I still got the message of it, because it has a way of delivering what it's trying to say and why Stan Lee invented the X-Men without like beating you over the head and being on its fucking soapbox like, hey, here's my message, do you get it? It's like, no, it's a story that is relatable, that you like, oh, we see a lot of this stuff in our actual society today. And when it's told from the standpoint of Charles Xavier and the X-Men, you're like, wow, that's really fucked up. Like, it helps resonate with you, but it doesn't do it in a way where you feel like you're being preached to, which I think is a very difficult tightrope to walk between like making an entertaining comic book movie and making something that people are like, oh, well, this is propaganda or something like that, which I've always respected about this film.
And at the same time, making it have that big stuff, but yet kids still can enjoy it and have fun with it.
And also, there's a guy who stretches his tongue out onto poles to hold himself when he's being blown by a tornado. You can put that in the same movie and it works.
Yeah, and do you know what happens to that said toad when lightning strikes it?
The same thing that happens.
The same
to
thing as
else.
everything else.
It's maybe
on in the movie.
Yeah, it's horrible. All right, best scene. What do you got?
So mine is the scene when Logan and Rogue are on the train, when he finds her and he sits down and they have that heart to heart, like, hey, look, these are good people. You and me are sticking together. What do you say? Do you think we should stay? And it ends with, and at the whole time, it's kind of flashing back and forth to the fight in the train station with Storm and Sabretooth and Cyclops, and he blows the whole fucking roof off. And it ends with Magneto taking Rogue and them you learning and them figuring out that the whole time Magneto hasn't needed Logan, he actually needs Rogue. Really, really well written, and just visually was great. I think the way that the chemistry between Logan and Rogue was really, really good. You actually felt like they were, like a father-daughter type relationship, or, it was, I don't know. It was just very, very well done. That's the only way to describe it.
Well, it's great, too, because the second movie, where it has that incredible scene when the school gets raided and Logan is protecting all the students there, which is maybe like a top 5 scene in any comic book movie ever for me. But this just feeds into that as well. Like, Logan, that's always been what's so interesting about his character. He's this vicious beast and like incredible brawler, but there is like at the same time he is this affectionate person that craves this family environment that Xavier has been the only one that could ever provide it to him. And that scene sort of shows you he's like, I don't want to be the guy who's brawling in fucking like hole in the wall bars. I would much rather have this sort of life. Which, that would be an honorable mention for me for favorite scene, would be the Wolverine intro in the bar where he's like cage fighting, which is just incredible. And every time he sits down and he orders like a tall boy beer, I'm like, I kind of want a beer now. But I kind of always want a beer, so it's not really.
that's not really anything.
Credit to the scene. My other best scene, though, similar to you, man, it's crazy in a superhero action movie that our two favorite scenes are dialogue driven, because mine is basically the speech that Magneto gives to Senator Kelly right after he kidnaps him. And he sits him down and he's like, what are you doing? Like, what's your plan? He's like, my plan is to turn you into the thing you're afraid of. That way you have no choice but to advocate for us. And it's so, I don't know, man. It just, Ian McKellen in and of himself, you could literally like be like, hey, can you read this menu from a Waffle House? And it would be incredible. It'd be like, pecan pancakes with a drizzle of syrup. He's like, that's fucking cool. Even though it's not. He's just such an incredible performer, and you can tell that when he got this role, he was like, "Look, I would like to think there's going to be sequels here, but if not, I'm going to leave my balls on the table, leave it all on the line, and I'm just going to go for it." And he did, and he absolutely bought into the role. And that scene right there is where Ian McKellen became Magneto to me.
I would agree with that. That is a great scene. And that's right after the train scene when Magneto and Toad are walking out the front and all those cops are lined up, and Professor Xavier takes over Toad and Sabretooth's minds.
Yeah.
And they're having that dialogue with each other through those other characters using their powers was really, really well done. Again, the stakes were so high, but it was still a dialogue-driven scene.
And just the tension when Magneto shoots the bullet and they cut away so you don't quite... You're like, dude, he definitely could have shot that guy in the head.
Yeah, I just don't understand why that guy just didn't back up. But that's neither here nor there.
He was just frozen in fear.
Fair enough. Yeah.
All right. Impact. I mean, we could probably go for a long time on this one. We've kind of already touched on everything else, but the 2000 X-Men movie, man, I mean, it had an impact in so many ways. What's the one thing that you think of now, 2 decades later, and at the time in Hollywood where the whole industry was at that this movie came out, that you're like, okay, this is what X-Men did?
I think this movie helped make who I am today. I was in 5th grade when this movie came out. If this superhero movie wasn't good, because I mean that's about the age where you start knowing about stories and understanding, deeper meanings in stories, and you can go deeper into stories, is around that middle school time. If this movie wasn't good, I wouldn't have gotten to grow up with all of these superhero movies and literally live in the golden age of superhero movies. And that's because of this movie.
Yeah, I mean, this came out, we talked about this a little bit on our last podcast, but this came out at a time when the genre was kind of like, people were like, all right, we've had our fill of that. Like, the last 2 big superhero movies we got were the Schumacher Batmans. And while those are really fun in hindsight, they definitely delegitimized the genre. People were like, oh, okay, so like superhero movies we're not going to take seriously. They're going to be like campy and way over the top and beyond even popcorn flicks. And then Bryan Singer's X-Men comes out and you say, oh, okay, wait, these actually have something to say and they need to be taken legitimately. And I think more so what it led to, like, this had the intention, obviously, from the end. All these things tried to build a franchise, but when this movie left, I mean, I felt like my appetite wasn't even slightly satisfied.
No, I had eaten half my salad at that point.
Yeah, and that's the appetizer,
Yeah.
Like, I always get the chicken Caesar before I get the meatball parm. So
it's just incredible to think, like, what would have happened if this movie wasn't good? Would the Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies, would those have been good? This movie took just a story that happens to have superheroes in it, as opposed to having a movie about superheroes.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that's what this movie showed the world, is that that's how you can make superhero movies. They're just normal movies. They just happen to have superheroes in them.
And it's kind of crazy because, like, I love the X-Men cartoons, and I probably had more X-Men comics. Maybe I had more Batman comics than X-Men, but I had a fuck ton of X-Men comics. And every character in the movie feels true to their comic book counterpart. So they were still able to make a very relatable, very poignant superhero movie without totally diverging from the source material or who the actual characters were.
Yep.
All right, last one, rewatchability. Banner, I'm not going to lie to you. It has been way too long since I rewatched this movie until just before this podcast. And I was even texting you in the beginning. I was like, dude, I think I have really forgotten how fucking great this movie is. Now, it falls apart a little bit in the last 15, 20 minutes. Like, that last action set piece is honestly my least favorite part. But it's not bad by any stretch. But rewatchability, this is something that I think I need to put on like my once every year or once every 2 years list, because it's just buried now under this whole X-Men franchise. People forget how fucking good the original one is, right?
Of course. Well, and it's hard too when your sequel is better than your original. X2 is better than X-Men, in my opinion, by quite a bit, actually. And this is a fantastic movie. Generally, just because I'm a weird freak of nature, I can't watch just one of them. And I love watching X2. So naturally, I have to watch X-Men in front of it. So I probably watch this once a year, once every year and a half, just because there's so many other ones that I watch in the series as well. It's a great movie, man. And like I said, it's always going to be relatable. Always.
Yeah. I think if you were to say like, oh, I want to, like, here's the thing. So Fantastic Four just came to Disney Plus. I'm assuming the other Fox movies will be coming. When they all do get over to Disney Plus soon, this is one that I think is going to get like a second wind. People are going to be like, okay, so I went back and rewatched all the X-Men. That first one is really good. Like, we're all sleeping on it. And I don't know. I think it shows, like, other superhero movies, especially the good ones, have emulated more stuff from this movie than the bad ones have. Like, if you tried to copy something from X-Men, your movie was probably pretty good. If you tried to go a totally different direction, it's on you, man. Unless you're Deadpool and you can go so far the other way that it's just fucking perfect.
But again, would they have ever thought to make a R-rated superhero movie? I mean, you can't even make a normal superhero movie.
No. And I was actually watching this one. I was like, there's some stuff in this that's pretty hardcore PG-13. For sure.
Especially for 2000 PG-13.
There's a lot of leather in it, but not enough for the year 2000, you know?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, all their suits are made out of leather.
Yeah, but I don't think you could have ever had enough leather in the year 2000. Your leather needed leather on it, you know?
True. That's true.
0 trench coats in the film. Who the fuck approved that? I don't know. God, why was that ever fashion? All right, Banner, before we leave the people for a review of X-Men, any last thoughts you want to leave them with?
No, this is a movie that had a big impact on my life. And that sounds weird because it's just a superhero movie, but to me, it was so much more. Yes,
I agree. I'm actually shocked we had never done a bro back on this before.
I am too.
Where did it finish again in our comic book movie madness tournament?
It lost in the Sweet 16 to Winter Soldier, which was runner-up in the entire tournament. So
tough draw.
Yeah, it was just a tough draw. I think of most of the other movies that lost in that same round, or that moved on in that same round, I think it would have beat most of them.
I mean, it's fucking phenomenal. If you haven't seen it, as of now, it's on HBO Max, but HBO Max's lineup is so fluid, who knows?
Literally changes by the hour. You can be halfway through a movie and they'll pull it off.
Dude, that's the future. They're like, sorry, we lost it. You're like, I'm literally watching it right now. All right. For the mad scientist Brian Banner, I'm the mayor, Jeff Hornacek. We are the Bro Force Squad podcast. Thank you guys for checking us out. Follow us on Twitter at Bro Force Squad. If you type in Bro Force Squad as 3 separate words on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Letterboxd for all our reviews, you'll find us there. And check out our website, broforcesquad.com. Banner actually wrote an incredible squad blog on the X-Men franchise called The X Factor, and I promise it's way better than that shitty reality show called X Factor. So, till then, we'll see you at the movies.
You're not doing a good job of selling that squad blog, because, like, you could just watch a goat licking its balls, and that's better than the X Factor.
I'm worried that a lot of people are going to not care about the squad blog and be like, oh, yeah, I remember that show. We're like, no, it's not the show. Fuck the show. It's the squad blog.